And we are officially live. Hello, everyone. It is Misha Green, DC editor. I am so excited to talk to esteemed attorney, judge, the hot bench star, and author of Make Your Case, Tanya Acker. Oh my goodness. We know and love her, obviously, from Hot Bench, but this woman has had a long career fighting for us, ensuring that rights are not only protected, but for sure given. And I know she has had a long trajectory in the world of law, even with President Bill Clinton. So I have a lot to talk to her about today. As we start the stream, we have to do what we always do, which is share, 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 share. You guys know, like I always say, sharing is caring. And we all know everyone loves Tanya Acker. So go ahead and be like me and share it with your family and friends before we get started. And then we will be good to go. There we go. Okay, this always does it where for some, like I know that there is a Tanya Acker Facebook page. I was on it earlier, but for some reason it won't let me tag it when I'm doing the sharing. But I will go back and well, it does it with everyone. I don't know why. I think because I'm technically two people according to my cell phone. So I don't know. We'll figure it out later. In the meantime, I am so happy to have you here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with your long publication with such a long and esteemed history. Really, thank you for having me.
Thank you. You know, I know that we don't have a lot of time, but your long resume, I could really talk to you about all day. I knew you from television and was so, engaged by the woman that you are, but gosh, you have had such a career. So I am so excited to talk about everything today. But first of all, we are in the middle of a pandemic. There is still a lot happening leading up to this general election, as well as the protests and everything surrounding systemic racism and police brutality here. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
How I'm doing and feeling is trying to recognize that I, like you, like all of us who are here because of the sacrifices and the dying and the bleeding and the beating that people endured who came before us, they did it so we could be here. We have a responsibility to keep up that work. They didn't make those sacrifices in vain. They didn't fight the Bull Connors and the domestic terrorists and the people who were keeping them from voting, the people who were threatening them and torturing them when they said they were going to exercise their right to vote. They didn't let that stop them. They didn't let that dissuade them. And so really, I mean, just to be quite candid, I have a very privileged life. As an African-American woman, I sit in a place where I think I have a perspective, but there's also a responsibility. There's a responsibility to remember that regardless of how comfortable my day-to-day is and how comfortable I am right now, that comfort cannot equate into complacency. We cannot be complacent. We cannot forget that, we've come from an incredible history and people made incredible sacrifices, but that work must continue, and it must continue until everybody has the right to walk the streets freely. Everybody has the right, whether or not they're having a barbecue or bird watching or being at home. We have the right to liberty and to be left alone, and the right to constitutional protections, and the right to respect from our institutions. And so, frankly, until that happens, the work's not done.
Well, thank you so much for that answer and in breaking it down in such a way. It was so much passion behind it. I have to ask, it was civil rights part of the reason why you originally got into law? And if not, what initially interested you in a career in law?
I'm going to be super honest with you. When I was contemplating majors at Howard University, I told my parents, at one point I was like, I think I'm interested in art or this or that. I had some time before where I was like, I think I want to major in art history because I like museums and I like art. And my parents were like, you know what? We lost the trust fund that you never had. So you better think about how to make a living and go to the museum on the weekends. I think that's really good. I think it's some of the best advice I had, because just like law is a good perch from which to try to build your nest and take care of yourself and handle your business and pay your bills, if like me, you come from a family situation that works hard and prides education, but most of us are responsible for building our own nests. And so there's that. But then to your point, law is not just a key to making a living, it's a key to understanding the world. It's a key to understanding how the rules are made, to understanding what rules you need to change to make the world more fair and just. So one of the things that attracted me about it was that it was so flexible. I mean, with a law degree, I wasn't sure when I went to law school. I certainly didn't think I was going to end up a TV judge, but I wasn't really sure what the path was. I've worked in law firms. There was a time when I thought I might want to teach. I mean, I went through different permutations of things, but what was key was that I had access to a type of understanding. And that's what I think the law is. Yes, it's a career, it's a discipline, but it's also a way of interpreting the world and learning it, and just even learning a little bit about it. I mean, in the book, my book is not a textbook, but I want to give people a sense of how some things work, certainly when they're in court, because then they have a better, provides a better basis for them to figure out how they want to approach and solve their problems. So I think the law is the key to just understanding how the world works. And I'm really glad that I'm glad, really, really glad that was the career option that I pursued.
It's so funny that you say that, because I was not thinking about how flexible a career in law truly is, but I was just admiring our former First Lady, who had a long career as an attorney before being anyone's first lady, and obviously all of the sort of entertainment based things that she's really doing, whether it's her podcast or different films and her books and things like that. But I was reminded of it in her closing argument, which she released on Tuesday, and that level of flexibility. It is key, but it also allows you to make a case in every sort of way. And I had totally forgotten that she knew how to close up an argument because of her many years doing that professionally. Obviously, your new book, Make Your Case, helps us sort of be able to put on a bit of that hat without any training and years of work.
Yes. My book is not gonna, there is one Michelle Obama, so I wish I could say, read my book and you'll be like Michelle Obama. But I can't make that promise. I wish to read my book for other reasons. But that was just, what a phenomenal woman who continues to inspire. And, you're right. Like, people got so used to seeing her as an incredible first lady, an inspiration, a role model, a communicator. But I just recently re-listened to an interview with Valerie Jarrett, where Valerie Jarrett talks about meeting her, when Michelle Obama came into the room for the interview, and then she ended up having dinner with the Obamas. Mrs. Obama is just a force. She was a force when she was in the White House. She's a force now. She's going to continue to be a force.
Absolutely.
So read my book. I wish, again, it won't turn you into Michelle Obama, but you should read it anyway.
It might not be a closing argument that trends on social media for a week, but
yeah, exactly.
Learn how to make a case. But tell us more about the book. I love the title, and again, while it might not turn us into Michelle Obama, I do think it will prepare us to be able to defend ourselves, not necessarily professionally, but knowing our rights, etc. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I really wrote the book because one of the things that I've noticed, both in my career before Hot Bench and during it, and now on the show, is that people really approach the legal system and they approach court sometimes with a sense of romanticism. They think it's going to be easier than it is. They think they can show up and the judge is just going to see right through it, cut to the chase, and what may be a very simple open and shut matter will be resolved efficiently. And court just doesn't work like that. I'm not giving people legal advice. I'm not telling people what to do. Every case is different. Every set of facts is different. But I did want to give them examples of the kinds of things that happen and why they happen so they can be better prepared for their disputes if they have to go to court. And also, frankly, so they can think about what court might require and then maybe give it a second thought. Sometimes when you know how hard it'll be to pursue a case in court, you'll think twice about going there. You might even think twice about forcing somebody to take you there if you know, in fact, that you owe them something or that there's something that you're supposed to do. A lot of the times we go to court because we don't have a lot of problem-solving mechanisms, right? Like we don't have a lot of, there aren't a lot of institutions where people who don't have money and don't have resources can be heard. Court someplace where you don't have to know anybody. Your parents don't have to play on the same golf course with somebody. You don't have to have your people set a meeting. Everybody can get there. That being said, everybody doesn't show up armed with the same information or the same sense of what the process can require. And if you show up unarmed and you have to be there, you could lose before you start. You could lose if you win. Because maybe you will have spent so much money and time and resources that your victory at the end of the day may not even be worth it to you. I don't want those things to happen. I just want people to be better informed and to have a more realistic sense of some of the things that court might require if you have to be there.
And this is the Afro. I have to ask, do you find that there's any disparity or is there equity among the people by race who are taken to court or go to court and feel like they are armed with the knowledge and ready to go?
I can't speak for all courtrooms. I can say this. I can say that I think that court is a place where there are rules and everybody is supposed to have a fair shake there. No, there are plenty of times where I think African Americans people jump to conclusions about us. They conclude that we're more dangerous. We're not as smart. We're more of a threat. Someone else can say something, and be screaming at the top of their lungs. If you and I say the same thing in the same tone, we will be roundly dismissed as angry Black women. I mean, those things are real, right? And so, and I think it's important to recognize them. I think it's also important to realize that court is where people have gone to get justice when they couldn't get it anywhere else. I mentioned in the book Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth went to court and brought a lawsuit to get her enslaved son, who'd been sold illegally, back. And she won. She won. So there weren't that many places where a woman who'd been born into slavery and who saw her child illegally sold could go get justice. She got it in court back then when the government wasn't even according us our full humanity. Has court always been perfect? Of course not. We remember Plessy v. Ferguson, but we also remember Brown v. Board. So court's a place where people who've shown up, who've not been treated fairly in life, who have had to endure incredible obstacles to even get to court, to get the education and go to court, but they've shown up and they've made a difference. So, I guess that's my long way of saying, yeah, I think that there are many situations where African Americans are not treated fairly, where we are not seen for who we are, where we are not respected, where presumptions are made about us that are not made about other folks, where we're not given the benefit of the doubt. However, I think that in terms of platforms where you're more likely to get a fair shake, where you can fight for it, where you can hold people accountable and at least look for you've got recourse to a process that can give you fairness where you might not get it anywhere else. I think that does. It can happen in court, and it does happen in court. Court, frankly, is where people have gone to try to get refuge from the unfairnesses that have happened elsewhere, and they've made it better. So for all of its flaws, all of its imperfections, all of the work that we still have to do, I absolutely believe in the system. Too many people fought and died for it to make it better, to make it work, to bring it where it is now. So instead of throwing my hands up And, I'm not going to lie. I mean, there are times I get very frustrated. There are things that we should be frustrated by, frankly, if you care about justice. But you can't let that frustration cripple you. You can't be so angry that you forget about the work that you have to do, because people are relying on us. People are relying on those with platforms and resources and voices and skills to try to impart more justice and make the system more fair. And so I'm committed to doing that. And a lot of people are. There are people are working full time on this. My friend Nick Turner, he heads the Vera Institute of Justice. I had him on my podcast. We talked in depth about criminal justice reform because, my book talks about civil court, but obviously there's this whole other conversation that's happening now about criminal justice and how the law engages with African Americans. And so these are important conversations to have. And it is through the mechanism of the law that I believe we can help improve things and make the system more fair and more just.
I'm so happy that you emphasized that today. We just had a few hours ago another show where we talked about Black people versus the Blue Lives Matter movement, and obviously police in general. And it seems, in like you said, that in many cases the court can protect us, and that the court is the place where we can go where nowhere else would be able to give us our rights, and it's a place to confirm our rights. We have a case like Breonna Taylor and sort of the unfortunate situations surrounding it. Is the court a place that can also bring justice for police? Because I think that is where people are really struggling right now.
It can be. And there are a lot of legal doctrines that people are talking about now that impact that. I mean, the issue of qualified immunity is something that both conservative and liberal justices on the Supreme Court have taken issue with. The court had a few cases before it. It declined to hear them. I think people thought that there was going to be some consideration of that issue, some reconsideration of that issue that hasn't happened. But yeah, I do think that even though it's not perfect, it doesn't always deliver the justice that people want or expect. It is a place where you can go and be heard. It is a place where you can hold decision makers, law enforcement, other lawyers. It's a place where you do have an opportunity to hold people accountable. It may be flawed. It isn't perfect. And again, it doesn't always deliver the justice that people want or expect. But sometimes, we just have to keep going back, and we can't give up. So, yeah, I do think that court's a place where people can go for justice, even, regardless of the flaws and regardless of the fact that it's sometimes quite imperfect.
All right, thank you. And I want the people to know who are tuning in. First of all, thank you for tuning in. But please, please, please share this stream and ask questions. In about a minute or so, I will get to your questions and comments and want to make sure that I can address, or rather that Judge Acker can address everything and that I can see it as we continue this conversation. So one of my last selfish questions is, I know that you worked with the Supreme Court during the time of President Clinton. I know that RBG was appointed by Clinton and was around, during that time as well. Did you ever have any sort of interface with her? And can you talk about that, if so, or even what she may or may not have meant to you? Then also this big battle around her, who is replacing her in the appointment, whether or not a new justice should be appointed now, and or with the new president. If you don't mind weighing in a little bit on that, again, selfish, journalistic, geeky question, guys. I'm sorry. That's why y'all have to ask y'all questions in the comment.
That's why you got to show. You got to show. That's why you get to ask those selfish, geeky questions. It's not so selfish at all. Nor is it geeky. Unfortunately, I never had the honor of meeting Justice Ginsburg, but like so many other people, she was an inspiration. I mean, she's really a reminder that none of us, women in particular, had to limit ourselves to false choices. She came up at a time and became a lawyer when women were told, you stay at home and have the family life you want, or you go have the professional life you want, and you're going to be sad and lonely. And she said, heck no. She really changed the law. She changed the world. She changed the rules for women in the workplace and elsewhere. So I just, again, she's a role model, and she's one of the ones, frankly, when we talk about why we're able to take some of the things that we do for granted, even at work. Not to mention my show, but I've worked in all kinds of places. I've worked in corporate environments. I've worked in different sectors. There's a type of treatment that I take for granted that I'm going to get that, frankly, my grandmother couldn't have taken for granted, that my mother couldn't have taken for granted. So I really appreciate her and her legacy. As to her empty seat, it's an interesting time. And again, I'll shift the conversation back to why I think court has great process, because if you look at some of the conflict around whether or not her seat should be appointed, as a lot of people may or may not remember, when President Obama was finishing up his term, he wanted to appoint Merrick Garland, I think with maybe 10 months left. And Senator McConnell held that up. And so now that the tables are turned, President Trump wants to appoint Judge Barrett with far less time. And I think that, again, when we're not outside of court, you can see people change the rules midstream all the time. The upside about fighting in court is that whatever your opponent did, it's on the record, and you have the opportunity to say, Judge, you know what? They did that then. They don't get to switch. They don't get to switch court. They don't get to switch course now. So for all of its flaws, court is some place where you got a record. You can hold people accountable to the record, and it's not as easy to kind of switch the rules midstream as it is in some other venues.
Thank you for that. And thank you to all those that are tuning in. We have James Crisp, who says very happy but low battery. Thanks for tuning in, James. Jewel gives us hearts, the 100, the Black Power fist, and exclamation points. Jewel, I think that you are loving us, and Jewel is one of our top fans. She always is tuning in. So thank you.
Hi, Jewel. Thank you.
So as people are continuing to tune in and ask their questions and comments, I'm going to go ahead and throw a few of mine in. Obviously, I have covered various court cases. I've sat in courts before, and I have a theater background. I have an acting background. I've never been in a recorded studio for any sort of TV show or anything like that. However, I'm curious, I know it has to be different, but what are some of the big differences that you find in an actual court and being a television judge?
So one of the things, it's funny, sometimes when people watch our show, they were like, you guys don't let the litigants talk enough. What you don't realize is that the litigants who are in our courtroom probably have more of a chance to express themselves. We let them go on much longer than would happen in an actual courtroom. Yes. We have the luxury, unlike judges who aren't doing their cases on television, we have the luxury of only having, let's say 10 cases a day, which might seem a lot. But if you go to a courtroom that, in LA County, for instance, in my home county, you'll encounter judges who've got hundreds of matters on their calendar. Now, maybe not 100 cases. I mean, maybe not 100 trials, but, litigants, lots and lots of people who they have to all process and address before 5 o'clock because most court budgets are too strained to pay overtime. So when you're talking about courtrooms that are not on television, you're talking about judicial decision makers, you're talking about judges who've got crowded dockets, who sometimes have to hear hundreds of people a day in a limited period of time. The court crowding was a problem even before COVID. I mean, in California, there was a federal judge who put a disclaimer on his rulings that basically said, I'm not going to be able to get to everything. I'm only going to be able to get to the things that I find material. And if you've got a problem, then you should call your senators because we've got a backlog. We've got a backlog of judges. So I think that, we really have the luxury of spending time that in some courtrooms, judges they just don't have as much time. The litigants who appear in our courtroom may have their cases heard much more quickly, again, because of those backlogs. So essentially we're pulling them out of line, and then, they get a resolution in our venue. But it's court. People show up, we do the case from start to finish. We give them a binding resolution. And I'm proud, I'm proud of what we do and of the way that we do it.
I really love it. And it's so engaging and enjoyable, but also truly educational and informational. I mean, I learned things when watching the show. Tell us how it went from, you went from being involved in law, teaching, working at law firms, things like that, to being an Emmy nominated television judge. Where did that that factor in your career plan, and how did that happen?
Yeah, it's funny. You never know what things life is going to turn up. I was never a teacher. I never taught law. I thought about it for half a second as I was going through all of my different, career plans when I was younger. But I've worked in law firms. I've worked on political campaigns. For me, I enjoyed a challenge. Like, frankly, one of my great fears in life is getting bored. And I look for things that are new and interesting. And again, the great thing about law is that it provides you a way to kind of figure things out, even if the specific details, of something aren't known. Like, it teaches you how to learn. It teaches you almost how to learn. It teaches you how to learn new problems and learn new techniques. But I think, how did I end up here? I was practicing law. I used to do a lot of legal and political commentary. So I was on different news networks talking about various issues. I got a call one day that CBS was casting a new show, and could I come down? And, I went down, I met Judge Judy. There were different combinations of people that they tried out together, and I made the cut. So 7 seasons later, here we are. It's been an incredible ride.
That is so amazing. And obviously, we've seen other African American women who are in law and or other television judges, but it's not as common as other races, and particularly seeing women in general is such a nice and refreshing thing. Is it ever a moment, or do you ever feel pressured to be a representative for your people, and or do people come to you and say, wow, I've been inspired seeing a woman who looks like me on television?
I have had the really gratifying experience, excuse me, of having young women reach out to me and say that I've inspired them in some way, which is really meaningful. I think that what all of us have to remember is that there won't always be somebody around who looks like you, right? There won't always be someone there who's in your precise package. But wherever you are, there is somebody who's interested in something that you can get passionate about. There's someone who can teach you something. There's someone who wants to teach you something. One piece of advice I have for people is that all of your mentors won't look like you. In some ways, it's like we are being conditioned to think that if we're the only ones in the room, then all is lost. All is not lost. Go up to one of those other people in the room and ask them a question. Introduce yourself. If you're in that room, you're in that room for a reason. Somebody in that room has something to teach you. Somebody in that room will learn from you. You have something to offer. So, I think that there is, when you're in a room and there's only a few of you in the room, or you're the only one, it can sometimes feel lonely, but we have to remember not to be intimidated by that, because remember, there were people before you and before your mom or your grandmother or whoever. Somebody like you may not have even been admitted into the room. Folks fought to get you into that room. You belong at the table. We're so often told that, like, these experiences, the experience of power and success and access, that's not for us. It's an impenetrable wall. No, it's not. No, it's not. There's nobody in that room who is smarter than you. They may know more, right? I mean, so if somebody's been doing something for longer than you have, I don't care what they look like, white guy, black guy, white woman, black woman, Asian person, Latin person, somebody who's been doing something longer than you may know more, but they're not better than you. They're not sharper than you. There's no innate inability that people get from growing up in a different package that makes them more able to succeed than you. So one piece of advice is, as hard as it may sound, and as, we get all of these messages about who we are and what we're supposed to be. One, don't let anybody else define you. Don't tell anybody what you're supposed to be like, don't let anybody tell you how you're supposed to be or how you're supposed to talk or how you're supposed to engage. You define those things. You find your own satisfaction. But more to the point, recognize that when you walk into that room, you belong there. And not only do you belong there, the room needs you. The room needs you to speak up, and the room needs you to show, to own your place in it. I would really like to do everything I can to debunk and demystify this notion that when we're the only ones there, we have to somehow, hope that we can make our way because everybody else that belongs there and we're the new kids on the block. They don't belong there any more than you do. Maybe they got a head start being there for all kinds of reasons, but they don't belong there any more than you do. So my advice is be there and own your place and know that you belong there.
Wow, I am so incredibly inspired from that answer. I felt like you were just preaching to my soul. Thank you so much for that. And I'm sure people are inspired. I really can't believe we are over the 30-minute mark of this conversation.
I'm serious. This is so fun. You're wonderful.
Well, you are absolutely wonderful and such an inspiration. I really, really, really thank you so much. Oh, we got to read this comment from Judge Trammell, who is one of our top followers, great sharer, and always tuning in. And he says, "I'm proud of you, Judge Acker. I'm especially thankful for your help with homeless." By Judge Trammell. Thank you so much.
All day. HU all day. Thank you, Judge.
So, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. Oh, and someone says, hello, Kingsley Ify or Ify says, hi from Finland. Well, hello, Kingsley.
Oh, Finland. Hi, Finland.
Hello,
Finland.
Oh, it's good to have you in the house. Thank you for tuning in. Oh, well, this has been so rewarding. Thank you so much. Please, 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 before you go, let us know that you are going to come and visit us as anything else arises for you in your wonderful world. And definitely keep us posted on all that you have going on.
I'd love to be back. I'm going to just push my book a little bit. It's out now. Make your case. Yes. I will be back. You're a joy. You have a wonderful program. Really a wonderful program. It was great being here.
Thank you so much. And just so the people know, also the book is in the comments on the links. I'm showing this here, but make sure you check it out. We will link the book. Like I said, I believe it's already linked, but we've also explained it in the comments. So guys, be sure. Oh, yep, it's linked right there. So be sure to check it out. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thanks to all of our viewers. You know that we need you. We couldn't do this without you. We are the Afro, the Black Media